Hello, I'm Laura Furiosi, divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years' experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom. There are times in our lives where we do things that we cannot undo, and we learn valuable lessons. But the one time you don't really want to do those undoable things is during a divorce proceeding. Today we're going to be talking about those things that you may be doing in your children's matters, your property proceedings, or in a DV case that you are going to regret doing and you will want to undo. We're going to discuss what those things are and how they may affect your case in the future, particularly if you're just starting out in separation or divorce or in a DV case. And these are definitely things it's really hard to undo. So listen today and make sure that you don't do these things. Of course, this is all general advice only. Lynn Galvin is a family lawyer of 35 years experience, also my mum, but it is general information only. You should always get your independent legal advice. Welcome, Mum.
Thank you, Laura. Welcome, Laura, and everyone. TikTok, is it?
Yes, and the podcast. We are multitasking. Yep. But today, I thought it would be really important to discuss some of the areas that maybe anyone who's listening today or on TikTok today, and they're in this space in their divorce where they haven't finalized anything, they haven't gone to court maybe yet, or maybe they're not going to court, but they just kind of started this separation limbo. And it's become apparent to us, particularly since we've been doing these live Q&As with our members, that there are some things simple steps that people can make so that they don't end up in the same trouble as some of the members that we have. Yeah. So I think we might start with children's matters first, and then we're going to talk about property, and then I think we should touch on domestic violence as well, and mistakes that people can make that can really, some of these things, you can't undo what you've done because it is in the history. You can't change it. So this is all about being proactive and making sure you don't make these mistakes. So let's start with kids, Mum. Yeah. And you always say, start as you mean to go on. So can you explain to me and to everybody listening, when it comes to children, what do you mean by that?
I think the biggest single thing is the time you spend with your kids and the time the other person spends with the kids. The big mistake I see some people make is that they might move out of the house. Perhaps they've got a violent or controlling ex. They move out and they say, look, the kids should stay here. I don't want to disrupt their lives. Wait until I get somewhere so I can have the kids. And by the time you've done that, weeks have passed, and before they know it, then the other person, particularly if they are that sort of parent, manipulative and controlling, will be saying, oh, well, they live with me. They can have weekends with you until we go to court. So, you need, no matter how awkward, no matter how distraught you are, even if you're on a couch at your mum's place, start having the kids. And if they're sick and the other person says, oh, they can't come because they're sick, say, that's fine, I can manage them when they're sick. So just get that history in place right from the beginning. It seems very cold-hearted, Rose. And you said, Laura, didn't you, that it was simple things? But simple things, as you know, are really, really hard to do even when you're just separated.
So if anyone's listening and at the moment they're couch surfing because they cannot bear to live separated under one roof, and their kids are staying in the house because it's easier for them to stay in the house, and like maybe they're just seeing them every second weekend or something like that, or once a fortnight or once a month even, but with the intention of, I'm going to get a house, I'm going to move in, and then the kids are going to come and live with me 50-50. If that goes on for, say, like this, only seeing the kids every now and then, what happens if you get to court?
The court, the other side says that, there's a reason the children are settled, they're staying with me, they don't need, and then they'll start raising issues as to why you weren't having the full time. And it becomes a massive fight to claw back to that standard. And you'll find usually early on in a separation, the other parent hasn't started strategizing and, seeing what he could or she could or couldn't do against you. So in those early stages, assuming they're as shell-shocked as you are, set that path up, those first few steps. But not only that, the kids will be devastated if you leave and they only see you occasionally. The harm, I think, that happens to children is terrible. So Look, honestly, some people rent a hotel room. They go back to their mums for that week or wherever they're having the children. Just make it happen. Make it a priority.
All right. So that's number one with kids, because it could affect your custody battle later if you have one. Make sure you're spending that 50-50 time with them, or as whatever it is that you intend to continue for the rest of their lives, even though it's hard. Now, another one that you've mentioned about with children is the boundaries that you probably need to set.
Yeah, and that's really hard for people, particularly if you're the one who's stayed in the house. It might be very tempting in that sort of early Pollyanna phase where you hope that your separation isn't going to damage the children's relationship. You're just going to go on normal. You might be tempted to have them over to have dinner with the kids, or even to stay over, or to pick the children up from the lounge room. Like, you might blur those lines. I think that's a mistake in the early stages. You need to say, particularly if you're in the original home, you need to let the other person know it's your place now. You're entitled to your privacy. So the changeovers should be at the door or at the front boundary of the property. Don't be letting them back in. Change the locks if it's been established that you stay there. Set yourself up a private space, because you don't know how they're going to react when you start to stand up for yourself and put your demands. And you don't want them retaliating. So you need to know you're in a comfortable space, establish that boundary. It'll stop the kids wanting to bring them in as well, and help the children get used to the idea of this separated family. So
it is pretty hard if there's that one family home that you've lived in for, say, 10 years, 17 years, and then all of a sudden, oh, no, I'm going to be living in the house with the kids, you're going to be living in a new house, and you might still be amicable, and it might be all a bit, everyone's tiptoeing around each other so not to upset each other. But if you get them to come and do handover in the house and see little Johnny's latest construction work and things like that in your home, but then later on things get a bit nasty or there's a drama, you can't really then all of a sudden say, no, I don't want you in my house, because the kids will be like, what? What's going on? So, and yourself. So you need to set those boundaries at the beginning so that if there is a clear defined, no, we're separated now, this is how it's going to go moving forward. Now, Mum, one of the other things that you say people make a big mistake with that can affect their custody in the court is social media. How does that affect?
Well, I mean, you can't do your crying on social media. You need to be circumspect. Assume that as your friends divide between your friends and his, as they choose sides, and I'm afraid they do, just don't put anything on there that could be used against you. Don't show yourself out partying. Don't put a lot of laments on the breakup of the marriage. Don't ridicule the other side. Don't run them down. All of those things will come back to bite you later on. So just be very careful.
How?
They get annexed to an affidavit and they say, she's not a fit mother. Look, she was out partying. Or here she is with the children, or here he is with the children and he's got them out on a bush block. I don't like that. So just, it's all evidence. So I would keep a very low profile on that. I think the conscious uncoupling sort of model that we've seen in Hollywood and the respect our privacy at this time, I think you need to respect everyone's privacy, yours, his, or yours and hers, and the kids' privacy. So it might be time for a little holiday of social media. And sometimes you get very sad and it's late at night and then you want to pour your heart out onto social media, and that's a big mistake, I think. So I wouldn't.
Yes, it's so tempting, especially when you watch TikToks and things like that, or
nothing
Instagram
against
Reels
TikToks or social media.
But don't be putting your personal journey on, because it could end up in front of someone. So yes, and it could affect your custody. Okay, and another one you talk about is setting that boundaries with communication and writing about children. The children's going and coming and doctor's appointments and things. Why is it important to be doing that in a written form at the beginning and during the divorce negotiations? Okay,
it's really important if you're amicable to keep it amicable and putting it in. You can ask them to put it in writing right away, and then while they're still friendly or reasonably friendly, and then that way they'll keep going. If you communicate verbally while they're amicable and friendly, they may change and still want to communicate with you verbally. So set that little parameter up early on and you stick with it and insist that they stick with it. Also, anything you say on those, including negotiations, can find themselves attached to an affidavit or put before a court by an unscrupulous lawyer. I hope there aren't many of those. But again, keep it all in writing, but again, don't put stuff on there that you don't want to be found. Okay, don't put stuff on there that you say, I can't cope with the kids, you can have them for the next 2 weeks or something like that. Don't do that.
Yes, because they might use that I can't cope in court but and say, oh, they're not a fit parent, right. They can't cope.
But it's important to keep your communications in the early stage.
And I guess you could say you could use that information if you do end up in a court custody issue or a mediation. You could say, look, here's the proof.
Yes.
I've been taking little Johnny to soccer for the last 7 years or the last 7 months. And I've been, having them from this. And, I mean, not everybody's ex is going to be a liar, pants on fire, but sometimes people get desperate and they really want something so bad they maybe imagine something happened when it didn't, or they are just liar, pants on fire. But if you've got the comings and goings of the children documented, that's going to stop a lot of the custody fighting. Is that right?
It's true. And no one can rewrite history. So it is important to have it done early. So that's important. Unless you're not having the kids as much as you want, you wouldn't want to be putting that in writing and setting it in stone.
So, don't put in anything in writing. That's probably going to go against you, I guess, in a way. But I think it's important that everyone knows that anything you put in writing is really going to be looked at intensely if you can't come to an agreement outside of court. And that takes us to the property settlement side of things, Mum. So people might not think they're going to end up in court for property settlement, but you may end up in a mediation. And it is another, some of the mistakes that people make that you've pointed out and this is one of them, is writing down negotiating and kind of half agreeing to property settlement before they're ready.
Yes. And there's 2 reasons you wouldn't do that. One is it may get raised in a mediation. It shouldn't get raised in court, but it might do. And the second reason is that you give the other person, you might not have had legal advice, and you might want to be being kind. Oh, no, I'm never going to touch your super, or I will go 50-50, or I'm not going to let you starve, I'll do this. You put that in writing and you're committed to that, and it can be used against you in the future. So be very careful. And it'll also play into the negotiations. But it raises your ex's expectations, and then you really find it hard to get them down from there. Oh, but she said she was never going to touch my super, and then they won't agree on superannuation because your first text or second text said, oh, I promise I won't touch your super. And then you get legal advice and you have to.
And I think that's a pattern we've noticed with our members and our listeners who write in. Right at the beginning of separation, they have a different viewpoint of what they want to happen at the end of the property settlement. They feel a different way, but for some reason everyone seems to change pretty much in a couple of months or in a year after separation. And then they go, wait, it's not about them.
This is what I've always told my clients. I think I've used this for 30 years or more. When you're a couple, you're together and you face the world together, and the longer you've been together, the harder that habit is to break, right? But actually, as time goes by, you realise each of you is going to take a different path, and your interests are not the same. It's really hard to go from a committed relationship where you've been a unit against the world and you and him or you and her against the world, and then having to look out for number one. But it does happen. It just takes time. It's kind of, I don't know. I don't know if it's like grieving, but, you hear it all the time. We're not going to be like other people. We're going to live next door to each other, or I'm going to move out of the house every second week and he can move in or she can move in.
Bryony said, she's on TikTok at the moment, she said, we agreed to a 50-50 split, no super, and then he went one up and tried to take the lot. So it is both sides.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, oh, no, let's do this the right way, let's do it. Or sometimes they're just saying it to you to make you feel better. And then they go behind your back, see a lawyer, and then go for what.
Yes.
So So just remember in those first stages and that first lull after separation, everyone's hurt, everyone's upset, everyone's dealing with just the whole world being different. That is not a good time to be saying, yes, let's do 50-50 or yes, let's do this until you've had time to really process what are you going to be doing in your future? What are you going to be doing for the rest of your life? How are you going to be supporting the kids? How are you going to be supporting yourself? You're not going to be with that person anymore. So you need to make sure you're looking out for yourself. And I know that sounds selfish, but it's not. It's business. And as we always say, try to deal with it in a business-like manner. So that is a big mistake people make at the business. What are some other property things people can do, Mum? We were saying something about the mortgage. There are things people can do that you can't undo.
Yeah. So I often find with mortgages, if they've got a redraw facility, again, when you're a couple and you're saving up and you've got a redraw facility, you might not think of it as an actual redraw, but you can redraw it. And sometimes one party does draw it out and spends it. So, you need so either take some steps to stop them. This is general advice only, but generally with my clients, I either get them to take some steps to lock it up so they can't take it out, or take half of it or take all of it on the basis that they'll keep it safe. It will come into the property settlement at some point. But, just be careful with things that they can do like that, which is redraw, especially if you think they might not contribute to the mortgage. You can use that redraw facility and start to pay it off.
So there can be that mistake where someone, you haven't got that locked up, someone goes and withdraws the mortgage, and then you think that's okay, it'll all get sorted out in property settlement, it'll be added back. But the thing with property settlement is it can take years. Like if it's nasty or if it's messy, you might not see that money back. That's right.
And legally, Rosie, Laura, sorry, I always call her Rosie, it's her middle name. Yeah, but legally, if they've spent that money on what they can show is living expenses, like rent and food and stuff like that, then it won't be added back. So some of my clients who aren't in a financial position, perhaps to get a new house to live in, like rent, bond and everything, take some of that money and use it for that reason, and then it doesn't have to get added back. So it's murky. So be careful. And it'll cost you a lot to prove it.
Yes. Another mistake that we've seen a lot of members do, and you've seen a lot of clients not know because there's just no knowledge about it. It's like someone should just write this guide. Oh, wait, we did. Write a guide to say, don't do this, don't do this. So one of the things that heaps of people do is that after they've separated, they've finally got back on their feet. They're feeling good about life. They've got their own little place. They start saving money because they're going to go on a holiday, their first holiday with the kids without buglugs. What happens is they don't realise in property settlement, if it hasn't happened yet, that money that you have busted to scrimp and save is going to be split as well.
Yeah, in Australia, that's the law because it'll be at the time of the trial. So, if you've increased your superannuation dramatically or if you've increased your savings, it's at the time of the trial. So, yes, that's a little...
Or mediation?
Is that mediation? Yes. And it's very tricky for you to say, oh, but I've saved that up post-separation. Well, what they say is, what the judges say is, the rationale is that the other person has maybe gone without to keep, they haven't sold the house or they haven't had their share of the property settlement yet while you're busy saving up. So it belongs to both of you because you've both gone with, or they've gone without as well, presumably. So, don't scrimp and save. Don't waste it, I guess, but spend it meaningfully for you and the kids.
And I guess it's something that is uncommon knowledge for people who aren't lawyers, that it's not this imaginary line that the minute they walk out the door and you lock it and go, oh, they're gone. That's not when it ends. No. So the family law in Australia, the Family Law Act and the contributions, they're looking at everything before the marriage, during the marriage, and after.
That's right. So you've learned well, Rose. We've learned well. So it's before, during, and after.
But I think I want everyone to know that. Yes. Yeah.
So it's before, during, and after. So there's no kind of ruling off of the books at the date of separation. And that sometimes people go for years before they finally clean up the property and have bought other houses and who knows what.
So if you go buy another house and you still haven't had a property settlement or a consent order, that properties included. Is that right? Would you like us to take away the overwhelm of the divorce process and give you the step-by-step guide on what to do at each part of the process and show you how to do it? Even giving you the correct wording and legal templates that you can use for your property or parenting agreement? Would you like us to show you how to do your own negotiations and mediations and keep it out of court? Well, then you're invited to the DIY Divorce Blueprint. It is the only training of its kind that shows you exactly how you can do your own divorce, property and children's settlements, mediations and negotiations so that you can finally move on with your life without having to spend thousands of dollars on lawyers and years in limbo. Go to www.thedivorcecourse.com.au/enroll to find out more today. Join us now. So if you go buy another house and you still haven't had a property settlement or a consent order, that property is included.
Yeah,
is that right?
That's right. Your equity in that property is included. So one of the tests I think of for leaving things drag out, you may not feel an urge to actually get a divorce if you're married. You might happily just live apart. But what if one of you finds someone else? Then it's going to be tough. You really, if you can, you need to peel yourself away and start clean, because it'll hang over your head for years otherwise. That sort of, but I'm still on that mortgage, or, but he pays my health insurance, or, she's paying for my rego or whatever. Just, everyone needs to stand on their own 2 feet. And then you can be ready for what life gives you then.
The other one that you've mentioned that some mistakes are made, Mum, is in the super situation, beneficiaries, etc. So can you describe to everyone listening today, if they're listening, what should they be doing if they've separated?
Yep.
What should they be going and doing today?
Again, as if people...
General advice.
Yep, general advice. But if people can't tell from our accents, Laura, I think we're fairly identifiable as Australians. So it's Australian law.
Aussie law.
Country girls.
G'day, mate.
Yes. So in Australia, you can make what's called a nominated beneficiary, and that nominated beneficiary is who gets your superannuation when you die. A lot of the time, and this is really broad general advice, the super doesn't go the way your will says it will go. A lot of the time, and Queensland's different to New South Wales and whatever, but most states, I understand, the superannuation goes to whomever the superannuation trustee thinks it should go to, and it won't always be as per your will. So it would be terrible. Didn't I tell you that?
Oh, my God. No, imagine if you died and it went to the person you hate the most.
Well, there you go. So, I mean, some people don't mind because they think, they'll have the kids anyway. But if you think about it, who do you want to be your nominated beneficiary? And it might be the children. And you might change that to the children. You can put that binding death nomination in with your superannuation fund, and then they can't just make their decision themselves and distribute it as however they like. That's one. Yeah, that's the main one, I think.
So they can just ring up their superannuation fund or go on the website and look up how to change the beneficiary.
There'll be a form. There'll be a form. Binding.
There's always a form.
There is. A form. Death nomination form. And talk to a lawyer about a new will. And on that point of the person you least like in the world, you don't want them being your attorney in the event that you come to a situation where they're choosing your nursing home, or they're choosing your whether to turn off the life support, or choosing your hospital treatments. So you might want to think about putting someone else there as well. Get that one done.
So that's called an enduring power of attorney.
So if you've had it is, it's
okay.
Yeah. So Australia-wide is our Family Law Act, except for WA, which is slightly different. But every state in Australia has their own succession law or wills law. Okay, so. So it's in Queensland. It's called a binding power of attorney or enduring power of attorney. In other states, it's got another name. So go and talk to a lawyer in your state, or do your research. And then also with your will, you wouldn't really want your ex to be the executor of your estate if something terrible happened to you. So you might want to quickly go and get a new will, even if it's just a temporary one, and then after property settlement, do another one, because that's a big mistake people make. Oh, I'll get a new will and power of attorney after I get all the property settled, which I would love to know how they think nothing's going to happen to them in that time, like a little safety bubble. But, yeah, just do it for peace of mind.
Yes.
I know.
Okay.
It's hard to
all right. Can we touch on DV? So if any listener here today or anybody on TikTok today has a domestic violence issue, has been in some horrible situation, and our hearts go out to you because that's terrible, and I'm sorry that you are. But what are things that you have seen happen that derail people's DV cases, or what are some warnings and some mistakes people make in domestic violence situations? And what can they take away from listening today to make sure they don't make
So the takeaway, I guess, is whilst you think it's very obvious and very plain that the other person is the perpetrator of domestic violence, one of the tactics that is often used by domestic violence perpetrators is to bring an application against you, a cross application, about domestic violence. And it's amazing the stuff that they raise as being domestic violence. And to a narcissist person, I think just saying no hurts them so much it feels like DV. So, again, being careful. We've said put everything in writing, but be careful what you put in writing. Be careful that you don't let loose on them, about maybe not having the children. Just don't let your hurt feelings find their way into a text message or a letter to them.
This has happened to one of the ladies on TikTok right now. So I guess it is really important to make sure that you I've heard of it, it's a term, it's reactive abuse, where, that sometimes what I've heard, they will do something on purpose to upset you, or they know you're going to flip out, and then they'll record you flipping out, or they'll take the message of you flipping out and say, oh, look, that's abuse. Yes. I mean, I guess it's the equivalent of a naughty little kid in primary school pinching your bottom and then you wigging out and smacking them. No one sees the bottom pinch, I guess. But, I mean, not that any of that is an excuse for hitting or anything, but you have to be aware to control your behaviour, because, Mum, it can be used to, I guess, they're trying to protect themselves by saying, oh, no, it's her or it's him.
And any little thing, they'll raise it. And even if the court throws it out, it still drags you through that horror of the DV, and it waters down your prospects of getting a final DV and a domestic violence order, I mean by that, or an apprehended violence order. And also it then finds its way in again to the affidavits and things in the family court, and also into the advice your lawyer might give you about your prospects of success. So just don't be that person.
Can I ask, does that affect, so does the DV stuff affect children's potential custody issues? It does.
Yeah. So Australian law is that the children, like the guiding principles and the top piece of legislation is the primary objective is that the kids can be cared for and love both parents, and that they're protected from harm. But where there's a tie between loving and seeing both parents and protecting from harm, when the court can't decide between those two, they are required by the legislation to elevate the protecting from harm. And that means on any interim hearings where there hasn't been time to unpack things, if you've done something or said something that the other side says, look, she's abusive, this, or he's abusive, he's done this, then the court will err on the side of caution and go, oh, well, that's a tribal issue. We'll have to look at that, at the overall thing. The court, one of the factors the court has to look at is whether there's a domestic violence or family violence order. And one that's agreed to is less powerful than one that has been litigated over and then the person's found guilty. Because a lot of people in the early stages go, I'll consent without admission, I'll agree because it's not worth the drama. And often, I don't know if it still happens, but the police used to go, well, do you intend to be domestically violent? No. Well, why not sign it? And then that's all very well in the state court. And then it goes over to the family court and the judge goes, oh, I see there's a domestic violence order. That's all they see in those early stages. So just be very careful. Yeah, very careful. And so one of the ways an awful person who has been violent will try to limit the damage of a DV against them is to bring one against the other person.
Except I think in Queensland now they've stopped that, the new legislation.
They were thinking about it. I don't know if they've done that legislation yet. Yeah, it's a recommendation that only one ought to be made. Yeah.
Yes, and that will help. Now, the other thing that we've noticed with our ladies in our members, some of them after DV, they've separated, they've moved out, but then the DV continues in this post-separation abuse coercive control situation. And one of those ways we heard just the other day, they had a joint email address that they've had forever. Yeah. And the ex locked her out and she's lost access to all her insurances, anything that the family account, like running of the household, it's all been blocked out. Yeah. And they're fighting in court right now to get it all unpicked. Yeah. So
I think she lost her photos too. It was the Apple ID. Yes. Yeah, as well.
Oh no, that was another lady. So there was a whole bunch of them there. So that is one of those things that you should definitely consider doing, even if your partner isn't abusive and you've just separated, is get separate emails, get separate accounts, get separate telephone bills.
Business life. Just
separate.
Business life. If you were two business partners starting two different businesses, you would have different letterhead, different accounts, and just set up that separate identity. And then let people know that you're separated, Laura. You need to tell the school so they don't think sending one thing to the old joint account is going to get to you. Tell the doctors, tell everyone. Apart from anything else, the kids need some support and they might start playing up at school or be a bit quiet at school. And if the teachers know what's going on, that's in the classroom, they can deal with it. But in the admin side, let them know that that old address doesn't work. And don't just say, I prefer this address. Just say, don't send anything to this address, which is the old joint account. I don't think you need to lock anyone out of the joint account. I think just copy it across to whatever you've got, start your new one and keep that one really separate. And different names, and different passwords.
Yeah, and I think with the DV ladies and the DV men out there that have got that going on, one of the things that we're hearing a lot of is the Apple ID situation.
It's a big one.
So it just the thought of it, if you've got an Apple phone, just the thought of changing your Apple ID would be a nightmare. I understand that, but some people have been able to be easily tracked through that. And there is actually a gentleman I know in Queensland, if anyone's in Queensland, who works with DV Beyond. Yes. And he will check your phones, he will check your car, he will check for all that kind of thing. So if you are in that space, you think maybe, why is it that they always know where I am? Why is it they know who I've spoken to? Could be they just cloned your phone, which is a really easy thing to do with an account.
Laura, they can watch that Uber account, check that your maps haven't shared your ETA with anything. It's amazing, the stuff. And, with the Apple ID, I totally get it. And often there's a family Apple ID. If you can't close it down, get a new one for you. And although you might lose all your other stuff, or you run the risk of it, at least everything from separation onwards you'll keep, because I think people don't know how to split all that up. It's very hard. Yeah.
Yes. You can go to Apple maybe and ask help, or go get a tech help. And if you're in a domestic violence situation, there are tech heads and ex-military people that do offer services to help support you in that situation. So Mel, I think really what we've kind of pointed out is, that there's a lot of things that you can do that seems like, that by accident cause yourself more trouble later.
And some of them seem mean, but, it's...
But the thing is, and a lot of people did agree that in the beginning, you're just not in that space yet ready to be making those kind of decisions right at the beginning. And then as you move further on, you kind of, if you don't set those boundaries, and that includes the boundaries with your bank accounts, with your moving your wages into a new account, choosing a different bank account, making sure you start to separate things. Otherwise, it does just continues to be a schmozzle. And then in if you don't document things correctly, or if you document things that really shouldn't be doing, it's all going to come and bite you in the butt later on down the track.
Yeah. And one last thing, Laura, I wish every one of my clients would get one of those cheap security cameras that are hooked up to their phone and put it on the outside of their house. If you're a DV survivor, even if you've moved to a new house, that's just basic safety, I think.
And I guess you've got to, the other thing is, and we have done episodes on mistakes that you make, but I think this is all about those mistakes you make right at the beginning. Come back to bite you, but it's really a psychological, emotional 180 where you've got to realize this is me. I'm doing this for me now. I need to make these decisions for my future and my children's future. And as much as you may feel guilty or sad or angry or hurt, whatever feeling you're feeling, don't let that emotion be the reason why you make decisions, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
And if you worry about why you're doing it, just think you need clarity. Let's get some clarity and some clear air between your life and the other person's life.
And I know we've mentioned this a million times in our podcast before, but one of the people on TikTok has said, don't leave the family home and don't move out until everything is finalised. Now, I get maybe that is coming from a place of
some people
losing your stuff.
Yes.
So what do you say about people who are worried about not ever getting access back to their stuff? Because I know another lady on here on TikTok said she didn't get her stuff. She ended up getting nothing.
Yeah.
So what tips do you give people?
So the tips are, like, if you can afford to stay in the house, I agree, you can generally stay in the house. But if you have to go, here are the things I've seen in my career that just get lost. No one goes to court, no one mentions them in court, the judge won't make findings. So any gifts you've had, your birthday gifts from family, any of your childhood stuff, your trophies, your music, your craft, half-completed crafts, a bicycle I've seen. What else have we had? Your jewellery, trophies. Yeah, I think I mentioned that. The wedding presents from your family, baby photos, frames, anything that's precious to you. If you can, get it out. I mean, because everything else, I always say, Rose, it's secondhand already, and you can buy new secondhand stuff. But the stuff that you can't replace, if you can grab it as you go. I know mostly we're thinking about the kids. If you've got children, it's hard to think about that. But if you've got any planning space and it's not safe for you to stay in the house, which is not for a lot of people, it's not safe, then try and take those things with you, or at least one representative of each of those.
Squirrel some of it away every now and then. Just pass it to your friend and say, hey, can you look after this for me in case I do leave? Yep. And I think you're right, Ma. I think what's the likelihood of anybody, like there are some people saying, I'm trying to get my things back. Does a court make you give things that, like your ex give things back, say they've got something that's really special to you?
They will not spend a lot of time making specific orders for little things, to be honest. They don't do furniture fights. If it's precious to you, I'd say get it early. You might be able to negotiate it like in mediation, but it becomes a distraction from the main game, and most lawyers and most mediators just can't understand the value to you of those things. And if your ex is abusive, they know absolutely the value of those things to you. And the number of times I'm thinking of those childhood special things, craft projects, music, and a bicycle on one occasion, the fishing gear, the answer came back, they're gone. I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean fishing gear? What do you mean? Did you have one of those? I don't remember that barbecue, So it just gets lost in the whole translation, and you'll never get it back, really. And I do remember one where the lady wanted a particular car back that her ex had, and he handed it over. It wasn't my case, it's a reported case. And it left it there, gave her the keys, drove away. It didn't have a motor. She took the motor out. And then that was more court case. And obviously because it was reported, I think it went to the appeal court. I think he got a big fine or went to jail. But even so, all that drama, when you just want it over, Yeah.
So in other words, it's unlikely that a court's going to order for them to return certain things. It will be included in the property pool, but only as second hand. So if you can get it while you can, and with children, go on as you mean for it to continue. Otherwise, that could bite you in the butt. Document that what you're doing for them. And with property, don't agree to anything until you've seen a lawyer, and make sure that you're in the right headspace, and don't put anything in writing. Don't do negotiations in writing. I mean, it's not supposed to be used in court, but it could be, or it might be used in mediation. And as Mum said, it could lock their mindset stuck on a number, because you said that when we first split. So, and with DV, just be mindful of the cross application that can occur to you, to make sure you don't react or do anything that you're going to regret later, and make sure that you've got those safety actions. So you've separated your accounts, and you've maybe got a new phone or a new ID if you think they're that kind of person. Anything else you want to say, Ma, before we go? Because we've got to wrap it up.
Yeah, I don't think so. Just I feel for everyone going through these awful early stages. But, if you don't feel bad if you can't do all of those things right away. One thing at a time, baby step.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we are going to be doing some more episodes. I can see some great questions here that we can add to another topic list.
Yeah.
So legal abuse, relocation.
Oh, legal abuse.
We'll be able to cover those for you guys.
Yes.
But make sure that you, if you're interested in checking out the podcast, it's called the Divorce Course Podcast. We're on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. We're pretty much everywhere. But our website is called www.thedivorcecourse.com.au. We have some free checklists to what to take before you go, which would be really helpful in your property settlement. We've got a mediation readiness checklist. If you're about to go to mediation, check that out. And we've, of course, got our DIY divorce blueprint, where we talk you through in our video lessons how to do all of the things.
Property, settle children, everything, not just getting a divorce. Yeah.
So, in saying that, Mum, we also are going to be awarding a free 30-minute phone call to one of our lucky reviewers. This lucky reviewer, her name is Bianca. Oh, Bianca, that's the only name I'm going to give. You'll know who it is. She said, "Thank you. I first found Laura and Lynette on TikTok a few months ago, which interested me as I was currently going through a property settlement and a parenting plan with my ex. I had such anxiety. I wasn't sure where to start. I didn't know what questions to ask, but after listening to the podcast, I would listen to them all the time in the car, and I've truly felt more comfortable and sort of relaxed in a way. I will continue to listen as much as I can as I continue this journey. Thanks so much, ladies." So that's Bianca. Yeah. Thank you for your review, Bianca. I'm just going to contact us via email at thedivorcecoursepodcast@gmail.com. I'm just going to turn this around again. There you go, Mum. And you get to have a free 30-minute chat with Mum like our members do.
So
well done, Bianca.
Yeah.
Yes, and thank you to everybody who's listening today on TikTok, and thanks to everybody who listens to our podcast. And I will say goodbye.
Bye.
If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you. Lynn would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only, and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording.